Hello once again everyone, and welcome back to 20 Things No One Knows About Fencing. Today we're going to continue with the idea of the sword in relation to you, and we're going to be talking about extension, contraction, and recession, specifically in regards to your guards. So, what do I mean by this? Extension, if you want to just follow along, is your arm out where it has its own weight, right? Just be by extension the sword, you are reaching for something, not necessarily you are always leaning forward, but just the arm is out. Okay? Contraction, a name I'm not necessarily happy with, but it's the easiest way to explain it, is just you as you are. So sometimes this will be a little in, but usually this is just the idea of where my arm naturally rests. And then there is recession, where my arm is actively behind me, which also causes my body to want to move. All of these look a little bit different with various different swords. We're going to go through it one at a time, and I'll bounce back and forth between the main systems that I do and explain the benefits and drawbacks of each. So, starting off, longsword. Let's start at our farthest. We are starting at extension. So what is extension? In the case of pretty much all longsword, it's just long point. Now, as I've talked about before, long point is not just this, right foot forward with the sword extended. It is also this, it is this, it is this, it is this, it is here, it is anything out. And the easiest way to really tell extension is to see whether or not your sword will get affected by someone else hitting it. So, right now, my sword, if someone were to give it a good whack, would move, but it's not really moving outside of me. If my sword's more extended, when it gets hit, it goes further. My arms, as a piece, are tempted to move when they get hit, which is coincidentally why percussive parries work. When I'm cutting down at you, it's not that you're just knocking the tip, that wouldn't really affect me all that much, it's that when I'm in extension, the whole shape gets moved. Benefit of extension with longsword in particular is that because you've got two hands on that blade, you can do a lot more in here. So for those of you that are German, this is where you're hunting from, this is those sorts of things, so again, we'll get back to that more in a second. The main thing you're looking out for though, like I said, is that it's so easy for you to get knocked aside. And that's why you don't necessarily want to get stuck always out here, reaching for your target unnecessarily. You want to move in and out of extension quite quickly. The idea being perhaps I extend and I'm back, extend and I'm back, throw a cut and I'm back. That sort of idea. Now with the rapier, extension is really easy to explain, or small sword or anything along those lines. Extension is your arm at 100. So we go through it bit by bit. This is about 50, 60, right? Most of my engaging and actions start to happen at 70 or 80, and then finally up to 90 or 100 is when I'm delivering my strikes. So out is what we're looking for. In particular, this should be the prelude to you extending with one of your attacks, but again also, your tip is very easily moved. Now, thanks to the proportions of the rapier and how you're mainly fighting with it, you'll find that, unlike with the longsword, with a little bit of discipline and good posture, your whole arm shouldn't be getting moved to the side. It should really only be that tip. And that's part of the reason that extension may not be as big of a deal with this. In this game plan, because it's more about angles, glides, and things like that, instead of percussive beats or things along those lines, not that those don't exist, this happening is not the end of the world. In fact, it's just a prelude to more things. This is where I'm in danger. The second I start letting my hand sway in this level of extension, or starting to get a little bit too comfortable doing this sort of thing, I am now inviting more danger than is worth. Okay, how about extension whistling with a lot of hand protection, linearity, but also more cut focused? This one's a little bit tricky because arguably extension is when you're hitting, right? So that would mean extension looks exactly the same. I like to think of extension with the broadsword and the saber and things like that as being more about where my tip goes. So right now, I'm in an outside guard and my tip is relatively vertical, which means I'm good for cutty zone. Something people don't think about a whole lot is that as your tip goes out, you do two things. Number one, and I'll frame myself with the camera here, I'm showing you how close that sword is to you. So you can tell about how long it'll take for it to reach your target once it goes around your sword. Number two is I'm putting my weapon out into a place where you can reach it. So I'm giving away the game in the sense of how far I can reach. And I'm also giving you something that you can act on. Now, it's not to say I won't do that on occasion. There's certainly a place for extended guards, and you will use them, but I want to do so sparingly, just like with the longsword. I want to make sure that it's going out for a reason. So extended guard for me in this regard is here. My outside guard goes from relatively vertical, where I'm keeping it tight to me and hard to mess with from you, and I let it go a little more forward to entice you to do things on it, or in the case of, for example, about to launch a beat, now I've got more sword out there ready to do things. So I'm intentionally letting my tip go forward. I don't necessarily let my hand move a whole lot though. I don't want it to be here unless I am in the action of delivering a thrust, but I separate that in my brain as far as what guard you're in. Okay, cool. So extension, what are the roundups of it? Your arms are out and thus can get manipulated. When someone interacts with your extended blade, a good disciplined fighter, only their tip should move and they should be able to do a lot from there. However, we are not all perfect, I'm certainly not, and as such, the big danger is that your arms can get moved. Once that's happened, extension is doing you no favors in the slightest, and you want to come back into contraction, or even recession, as we'll get into in a moment. What do you use extension for? Probing, mostly. Getting your sword out there with relatively little consequence. Again, once your arm is extended like that, and the tip gets buffeted where it's going to get buffeted or engaged or what have you, it's easy for you as long as you're judicious. Keep that hand in the middle, put that point a lot of other places. Other downside, however, is that because it's an extension, you have a smaller point of rotation for cuts, which means they're fast, but the tip itself has to travel very far. It has to go from the center all the way around back to the center. So bear that in mind. Now, moving on into the idea of contraction. Again, I'm not necessarily very happy with this name. Hopefully a small airplane isn't going down. The idea of contraction is just you. It is the idea of this is my space, these are where my arms kind of naturally go without me actively putting them forward, so this is my contracted state. That's where most of your initial guards are going to be. So contraction in this regard would be the idea of hanging out in short point, for example. Maybe I go to Vantage/Postidona, right? I can hang out in one of my oxes or one of my flutes or something along those lines, or even down in Oliver/Portiferro or what have you. It's just me. It's just me. I'm not reaching out to you. I'm fighting very much within my own body, keeping myself relatively close together, relaxed. This doesn't cost me anything to hold any of these positions. And from here I can go into extension or I can go into recession. And that's the important thing, is that you as an existence is the middle ground. So yes, and I used to do this too. Your initial engaging position can kind of be out a little more, but you want to be cautious about that. Because when I'm trying to blend two things, I tend not to get the benefits of each, I tend to get the drawbacks of each. So being out here means that my tip is easily buffeted, and thus my arms may move. But it also means that when I need my weapon close to me, I have to pull it back rather than it already being there. And that's really the main benefit of contraction, is that your weapon is next to you and strong, which is more exemplified with my other weapons, so we'll get to those in a second. But the guard that I think it amplifies it the most would be something like Ox/Fenestra or Fluke. Right? The idea being, I'm already very strong. A cut could come down onto this shield and I wouldn't care in the slightest. Same idea over here. Cut could come up into this and I don't need to move to make myself strong because I'm already in that push-up position attached to myself. Okay, so what is contraction with the rapier? It's just your arm being relaxed, right? My arm is not out in extension, having to hold up this weight. It's just here, just handshake, nice and casual. My lat and my posture are helping me hold this up with no difficulty. And that means that my arm seems relatively low. My tip is of course still up at my target. I'm not letting this happen, but it's relaxed, it's down. I'm able to move very easily. I'm able still to play with my tip because of the unique attributes of this proportion, but I'm able to play with the tip, keep myself back. Life is pretty chill down here. Now your contraction does change a little bit depending upon your posture, which is something we also need to talk about. More evident with the rapier postures, though it does happen with longsword postures too, or messer or things along those lines, is I'm in contraction in the medium stance. I'm in contraction in a rearward stance. Not a whole lot changed, but I did come a little bit more back. But now I'm in contraction in a forward stance. So yes, my arm is a little bit more extended because I brought my head a bit more forward, but I'm not full extension yet. So bear that in mind. And this also is a slightly proportional thing, but generally speaking, it should be comfortable, nice and relaxed. Everything's great. Anything comes toward me, turn my edge. Comes toward me, turn my edge. And like we talked about, I am not all that physically big, but it's okay for me to take up space. So when something comes in, cool, that is going past me. Cool, that is going past me. That's really all I need. Turning my contraction to something where I try to use strength is not doing me any good, just the same as being too comfortable out here was hurting me. Okay, what about broadsword, saber, what have you? Well, again, same sort of idea. Just my comfortable guard, my comfortable guard, right? Arguably the hanging guard kind of blends, but that's the benefit of having a hanging guard. It should be a place where, and when a cut or whatever comes in, that should be more than strong enough to deal with it. And if it seems like this can't, then I know I need to be retreating or I need to be thus receding. That's the main thing, is just I'm a brick wall, whatever's gonna hit me, I can stop. Okay, cool. So what is the sum up of contraction? Contraction is summed up as your natural state. Mostly it's where your guards originate from, thus all of your attacks, all of your defenses, what have you. You should not need to modify too much to receive a blow in the line that you are already covering. Obviously you'd be moving from one position to the other if they were attacking your opening, but again, you then get the chance to make the choice of stay in contraction, go to extension, or recede, which is what we get into now to bring everything together. So, what is recession? That's the tricky one. So, recession is more than just having your sword behind, next, or close to you. Recession you should really think about this way. If extension was me reaching out toward my opponent, and contraction was just me as a piece, so if my opponent were to reach out toward me, they would just get stopped by what I am doing, then recession is to be thought of as me making a hole. I'm intentionally bringing them in close to my bubble. Right? For those of you that have heard me talk about bubbles before, I'm bringing them into my bubble so that I can deceive them and thus hit them at a contracted state or in an extended state. Again, more tactics to come later. So recession, again, you really want to think about opening a door, drawing them in. Some positions do this by default. More often than not, it's some actions do this by default. So in the case of the longsword, or most often wrestling or things like that, the easiest example would be opening my hips up. So I go from square to open, which draws this back and pulls things in, and we want to get more complex than that. Then I can start vaulting, which also brings my body back, brings everything back here. But it's not about me always loading. It's also about drawing my opponent deeper and pulling them into a trap. So, a couple of examples of that. Some positions that I would describe as recession. Anything where my sword is actually behind me, so Codalonga / Nebenhut, whatever you want to call it, right? That's an idea of a recessed position. But so is Dente de Chingaro also / Vexel or Nebenhut, right? Because I'm intentionally not just having my sword down, I'm pulling my sword back and loading a little trap here. I want them to come in so I can extend through. So that I would define as recessed. This has much the same idea. I'm trying to draw them in so I can either pass backwards or I can instead pass forwards into it. I've deceived them with my range. Anything recessed like Poste de Dona Soprana / Zornhut, that again is a recessed position. And in particular, you'll find yourself ending up in these places. Same thing with the Sinistra version for both. Really, for this, the big thing that you want to be thinking about is I throw out my action, I hit, and maybe contraction doesn't get me away enough, right? So, as a basic example, I just throw a hard cut with a passing step. My sword naturally wants to go back. So, since my sword is going to go back, let me also go ahead and let my body go back with it. Now I'm making a little hole, buying myself a little bit of time, because as we talk about again and again and again, distance equals time, time equals life. I've done something to promote my opponent into stimuli. Let me give myself time as I load myself back. If I knew I didn't have that time or space, I shouldn't go into recession. I should go back into contraction and be ready to then deal with what they're going to do next, which is usually what you do off of binds or things like that, but not always. Sometimes you just go into contraction and wait for them to go to the next opening. So to show that again, I cut freely and I have time and I'm expecting a big tempo action. Cut, let it go back, make a trap, wait for whatever they're going to do next, and then do whatever action I'm going to do afterwards. In that case, probably breaking the point or something like that. Alternatively, I don't have that kind of time. Cut, okay, I can either sit into like the scales or what have you, again, opening, but I'm not receding, I'm contracting and getting strong. Or if I think that they're just going to leave me, then I go ahead and go to a position from which, if they're going to cut around or what have you, I move to another contracted position. Because I know, once I'm there, I'm safe. I should be in my strong guards. I don't need to recede. But if I am going to recede, I need to give myself a little bit of time. Same exact idea on this side. Especially the big left cut. This is something that intentionally opens you up. Now if you're ready to use it, for example, I'm making a trap, then it's fantastic because I can go a lot of different directions with it. If not, I need to make sure that I'm choosing to go into something that gets me ready, gets me up, and allows me to pull them into something powerful. That's why Zork is so sweet. It's because you can cut, load up your body, and you've got the power of a passing step in the turn of just your shoulder. But enough about longsword with that. Okay, what about rapier? Well, now we get to all those outlandish Fabre's postures everybody loves. So one, Recession here can also turn into a tactical game that I'll talk about more with the broadsword, but more often than not, again, it's that same idea, pull them into a trap. So arguably, Recession here also includes the postures off of your voids. So that would be the tirata or inquartata. That is a recessed position in that I pull myself out of the way, allowing them in. The same is true with the triangle step with the longsword, but it has a little bit more involvement. Or the idea of voiding out with a passing step, or even voiding low. I would describe these as recessed, even though I am extending. The idea is I pulled them into me to hit them, so same idea. But generally speaking, that's those crazy zany postures like here, my super up close secunda or things like that. It's not about take this weird position and somehow you'll be good. The idea is I'm drawing closer and closer. In fact, the intention with a lot of these is, usually on the retreat or something like that, you let your sword get closer and closer to deceive them as to how far you can reach. I deceive you as to how far I can reach, and things like that. Another fantastic example would be if you have a dagger on the other hand. Now all of a sudden a lot of your guards can be recessed because you have this other tool allowing you to protect yourself. And Sword and Buckler does this even more, right? That protects you and allows you to deceive someone as to exactly how far you can reach. It's that same trap over and over and over and over again. The big thing for, I would say, rapier and small sword and stuff like that is you don't want to recover into Recession as much as you do with longsword. The reason for that, and same is true for backsword, is because I want to extend, lunge, hit, whatever, right, or provoke or whatever, and then I want to return to a place in which I can do the littlest amount possible, right? My parry should be simple, mostly direct with my point, or if I'm going to use my hand, right, it's just a means to an end. I don't want to get in the habit of shrinking all the way back because now I have to do a big action to defend myself, usually with my hilt, and that never ends well. I'm sure someone will dispute that in the comments, but you know. Now, finally, broadsword, backsword, saber, all that sort of stuff. What does Recession look like here? Two things. So, like I talked about with the rapier, you can do a tactical choice, which is you can creep. What I mean by that is my guard, my default guard, is about here where I am strong. Creeping in this regard is when I intentionally let my arm come a little bit closer to me. I usually do this with quick footwork to get myself a little bit closer to my opponent than they expect me to be. So either my lunge can overrun their retreat, or alternatively I can hit without a lunge. This would usually be the idea of like parrying on an advance. Yes, I can parry in my good shape like I should be in an attack. However, a lot of people, when they see you coming forward, they anticipate that and start trying to create a little bit of distance. So I let myself recede a little bit on this parry, step in a little deeper, get myself a little closer. And that can sometimes negate someone who's trying to cut and fly away. It is dicey though, bear that in mind. No, more often than not, what I would describe Recession with these being is when you have to add extra to your parries. So a perfect example of this would be, I can stop pretty much anything with this St. George, but I need a little more because either they're cutting harder or they might also cut from my leg, so I recede it with a slip. That's a perfect example, and thus by proxy, all of our slips are about the same exact idea. However, there's also times when my inside guard just doesn't quite feel like enough. Now, the preferred answer that I like to do is to retreat, right? Okay, I know I can't block this with just here. Let me get a little bit of distance so that my guard can remain the same and consistent. However, maybe I know this is a one and done sort of person, so I will let my arm contract that little bit, recede that little bit, receive that, and then hit with my maximum extension. Generally speaking, what you want to be looking out for with Recession in this regard is it should always be baiting something. If you're just parrying really close to you, you will feel stronger, but you'll always make yourself more open to subsequent blade action. As we talked just a moment ago, you get a really quick pivot point with just one hand on the blade. So, what is the sum up of Recession? It's all about setting traps. Don't let yourself go back just for sake of, ooh, I saw this in a book once, I'll take this position. It should be to draw somebody in so that your normal contracted level can hit them and your extended level can run them down. That's what you want to be focusing A lot of this is not just blade work, it's also the footwork that sets it up. So things that allow for that, of course, passing steps with the longsword and the rapier, giratas and other sorts of voids with the rapier, what have you. And then triangle steps with the longsword, the rapier, the messer, all that sort of stuff. With the backsword, traverse or slips is really what you're looking for. But really, all that footwork could be used interchangeably with these swords to better or worse result. You should eventually just kind of start moving a certain way. With the blade, though, is the part that matters. You are either, when it comes to contraction, you're intentionally drawing them in close so you can spring, or you're recovering from an action, drawing them into you so you can spring. That's what you're looking for over and over again, and it depends upon what your opponent responds to. Those of you in my open classes, we did a month or so where we worked on, do they respond to the tip, or do they respond to your body? You'll have to use that strategy dependent upon what you see. So, all together. Extension, the sword is out, it can be manipulated. Benefit is you've already got the most important part, your dominant hand, in the middle, which means that you can do a lot of things with relatively small rotation. Drawback, your whole shape can get buffeted or compromised. That'd be like a hand snipe or someone wounding on the low line or things along those lines. And also, when you then seek to cut next, it will have to make a full rotation. You can do it fast, but it still takes a certain amount of time. Contraction, benefit, it's just you. This is your U shape. You should feel very strong here. You should be able to launch several attacks from here. You should be able to pretty much weather any storm that comes toward you. Benefits are, pretty obvious. Drawbacks, it's hard to have confidence in yourself sometimes. And we all suffer from it. Or I just don't trust my shape. But you should trust your shape, because your shape has, a couple hundred years of fencing practice behind it. If you're taking it right, it will do the right thing. And if someone's using more to get through it, then we start to use distance, because distance negates all strength. Now finally, recession. Recession, I am intentionally opening my body, bringing my body back, bringing my weapons back, drawing someone in with the express intent of then exploding forward. The more you can get somebody to come in, the better. Otherwise though, thank you all very, very much for watching. We'll go over some other techniques another time.